welcome to episode 158 of the Tilehurst End, where we're putting the mad back in Madejski. Yes, it's a new dawn, it's a new day at Reading FC. Paul Clement is leading the team just as we like it, with 1-0 hard-fought wins. You said you didn't like passing football. This is the alternative. There is no in-between, quite frankly, for Reading FC. It's one or the other. Nice passy loses or very gritty wins. And as I say, it is episode 158 of the Tilehurst End podcast. And thank you again to all of those who continue to put into our Patreon campaign. I know I don't mention it enough. I know I always say I don't mention it enough when I do get around to saying it, but it is appreciated and it is going to good causes, and we will be putting some pennies in the bucket for Hunty's column, Johnny Hunt, who writes for the Tilehurst End. He's just had a Neville Southall interview. Go up on the website, check that out, because on Tuesday night he is walking to Fulham from Reading in a charitable cause that we can all get behind for great causes. Any more information on that we'll be putting on the Tilehurst End article on the Twitter. Anyone want to get involved in that and put a few pennies in the bucket, hugely appreciated. And I myself, Marc, Mayo, your host, will be down at Fulham on Tuesday, and someone who will also be down at Fulham on Tuesday and was at Preston on Saturday for the 1-0 win was Simeon Pickup, aka BucksRoyal, who's joined me for this episode of the podcast. How is it going, mate?
I'm very well, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I didn't get down to the Preston game, so sadly I couldn't be part of the, I don't know what we're going to call the little South Stand troop that was there. I mean, it was a weird thing. We'll get into it later. We'll do a proper pub chat on atmosphere. But we would obviously know about it beforehand, and I wasn't too sure how many people were going to mention it. But Chris Gunter and Gareth McCleary have both put stuff on social media about it. So, you know, the whole of Reading Football Club is interested to know about this little pack of people down in the South Stand, to which you were one of them, Sim. So we'll be talking about that later on in the pub chat, and we'll get onto the Preston recap in a few seconds' time.
The view from the Tilehurst End, recapping all this week's action.
So Sim, every week I always make a podcast plan, and luckily for this week's I didn't have to change the first line, because from the same as the QPR game, I'd written 1-0 hard-fought win, fight, grit, hassling. That was pretty much how to sum up the Preston game, wasn't it?
Yeah, to a large extent it followed a lot of the same beats as the QPR game. Scoring quite early on, I think it was about quarter of an hour into the match in both cases, and then Reading just having to defend from there on in. We weren't particularly entertaining going forwards in either game. There wasn't much attacking flair to get excited about, but that's not really what matters at the end of the day. It's about getting that goal, keeping a clean sheet, and just getting the points on the board, which we haven't done all season. Regardless of what you think about what a manager should achieve, Yapstam was never able to, or not enough able to get those gritty, hard-fought 1-0 wins, particularly in the second season. Happened a few times, but not enough, and that's the difference when you're at this end of the table. And it could be what gets us out of trouble, being able to just sneak a few goals down the other end and coming down back into our third and keeping out everything that comes our way. I think we conceded something like 70 odd shots in 3 games, but we know how to keep them out. We know how to. The defence got a lot more organised in the last couple of games. They seem more confident, more resolute, more in a Laurie have grown in stature and confidence vastly in the last couple of games, and they really look like an inspired duo at the moment. So credit to Paul Clement for bringing the best out of them.
Yeah, what do you think's changed with Liam Moore and Thiago Aloy? That centre-back partnership didn't get that much praise after the QPR game, obviously not so much after Villa, but he stuck with them all the way through. One of the things I noticed, Liam Moore he won 21 aerial duels against Preston. Now that is almost was one every 4 minutes almost for a player. Liam Moore's not the tallest of men. He's quite bulky. He's pretty strong, but he's not a Jake Cooper style defender, or certainly not what we put that down to. One of the other things I want to talk about with the centre backs is the passing accuracy, and I think this is probably key to how they've improved, because Thiago Aloy in particular, I'd say he's pretty decent technically, but he does make those mistakes when he's under pressure on the ball, and the passing accuracy on Saturday against Preston, 62-63% for the centre-backs. You compare that to the home game against Sheffield United earlier in the season. We lost that under Jaap Stam. That was 75-90%, versus Burton, another game that we lost under Jaap Stam, a home game that we should have won, both 89%. So there's a real drop-off there in terms of passing accuracy, and I think that simplification of the centre-backs game must be having a big effect.
Yeah, I think Clement's asking them to do a much simpler job, as you say. He's allowing them to get back to basics and really focus on just defending first. And if they want to keep hold of the ball, if they want to play a more simple pass to keep hold of possession when they're able to do so, he's going to let them. But if they're under pressure, if they're in trouble in terms of a opposition striker breathing down their neck, they're able to just boot the ball into Rosette, and it relieves a lot of pressure. It's not just about those small moments when they're under pressure, but it helps their whole game because they feel a lot more confident, a lot more composed and calm in general, and it helps them to just be a lot more dominant and to really excel in things like aerial duels, as you mentioned, or just being more decisive. It's an all-round mentality which Paul Clement has really managed to get hold of in his first couple of games. You saw him do a similar thing with Alfie Mawson at Swansea City, where he came on really well in that Paul Clement was there in his first season, and he seems to be having that same positive psychological effect with Reading's defenders at the moment. I know he wasn't playing on Saturday, but Tyler Blackett was not exactly the most popular of defenders under Jaap Stam this season, but you go back to the QPR game, the first one that Paul Clement was in charge for, and Blackett looked a lot more confident. It wasn't an amazing performance by any stretch of the imagination, but the increase in confidence was noticeable. Just, you can look at them and see that they are a lot more happy in being able to boot the ball away if they want to, if they have to, and it affects their whole game. It's a real noticeable change.
I think it's important to note that, you know, we're talking about them in the headlines at the moment because it's such an improvement that we've seen. That I think what Clement has actually done is he's taken them out of the headlines in a large sense. Obviously, you know, they've had man of the match performances this time, that's all great, but he said, don't be the player that makes the mistakes, don't be the player that everyone's talking about after, do get the ball rid. And do you think that's something that we're going to see? I mean, let's hypothetically say that we stay up next season, that we're still in the Championship under Paul Clement next season. Do you think that he is going to slowly move into a sort of more methodical passing game out the back, or do you think this is here to stay?
To an extent, it's here to stay. Certainly in contrast to what we've seen earlier this season under Jaap Stam, there'll certainly be a lot more hoofing it away when we're in trouble. But going forwards next season and a couple of years after that, I imagine we'll see Reading defenders passing out from the back when they're able to. It's quite a popular modern trend at the moment, centre-backs passing out and really building from the back, and I expect Clement is someone who's going to try to build that at the club over the next couple of years. Looking at his comments after the game on Saturday, it was quite interesting that he seemed to really emphasise at the moment it's just about defending first, it's about doing whatever Reading can to get the points on the board and stay up, but then looking in the medium and the long term, he wants to develop something more, and I guess with the playing style, it's going to include playing out from the back and letting Moore and Delory try and pick passes to a bigger extent than they did on Saturday.
I think it's going to be interesting because Stam always pressed this on no matter who was playing in the team. I think with Clement, I hope with Clement, that it's going to be more based on what his players are capable of. And if he gets into pre-season training next season and he works out that, you know, maybe if he signs someone or if it's still the same players that they are capable of it and that he trusts them, then he'll go with it. I like to think if it won't work, then he doesn't go with it and he sticks with what he's got at the moment. He did say after the game, as you sort of mentioned, he said that when you stay compact, you're more together, you're getting in the right positions. If the opposition gets more shots in from range, you're getting blocks in. If they're getting crosses into the box, you've got players in the right positions to head the ball away. And he's absolutely right. Blocks and headers are what we've seen far, far more of in the last couple of weeks. Down under Jaap Stam, that has been probably the most notable change. And you mentioned it a bit earlier. We conceded 17 shots to 5 in the Preston game. Do you think that's an accurate reflection of the game in a sense? Was this Preston taking a lot of pot shots? Was it pot shots not from advantageous positions, maybe still inside the area? Or were Preston actually making a decent number of chances for this to still be a worry for us?
I think the 17 shots is broadly reflective of Preston having a lot of possession, a lot of territory, particularly in the second half when they're pushing forwards, trying to get that equaliser. But besides a couple of chances, they hit the bar in the first half and in the second half. I think they had quite a close range effort in the second half as well. Besides those, you never really properly felt that they were going to get that equaliser. Reading seemed a lot more dominant, a lot more comfortable defending, and the efforts that Preston had were a lot of them for outside the box. They're just more hopeful in nature. They weren't really properly built up attacks. They weren't clever kind of interchanges as you'd expect from a really good side, and you could tell that they've lost Jordan Hugill. Reading knew how to marshal what they had in front of them, and they did it very well.
Yeah, I want to think about next season just for a little bit before we go on to the pub chat. Is there a team to build around for next season from what we have at the moment, or do we still need wholesale changes? Because when Jaap Stam went, and certainly after the Villa game, I looked at that team and thought, no matter what, it's worth a squad clear out. It's still worth us rooting out a good majority of the players, perhaps a lot of the older players, such as Jan Kermorgan or maybe Dave Edwards, other sort of players in that age range, Joey Vandenberg, etc., etc. Is it still worth us trying to have a squad turnover in the summer, or do you think there is something in the team that we have at the moment, who largely got us to the Wembley playoff final, that Paul Clement should stick with for next season?
I think there's a really good core in that squad at the moment. People like, I guess looking through the Preston team, Manone, Gunter, Moore, Laurie, Kelly, Swift, Barrow. There's a lot of really talented players that you can build around over the next couple of years. So I'd hope to see them stay with us over the next couple of years and really, really kick on. But with regards to the other players, people like Vandenberg, Kermorgan, Edwards, there's no real pressure to keep them or let them go, to be honest. And I guess from all their point of views, less so Kermorgan, who's going to be retiring soon, they've got a couple of months to prove to Paul Clement why they should be staying at this club. If they can't prove it, then that's regrettable, but it's not a huge loss for us. There's there'll be a lot of time to make these decisions in the summer. At the moment, we've just got to stay up, and some players are naturally going to shine through. I imagine, I guess Joey Vandenberg could have a good couple of games ahead of him. He's that kind of gritty, physical, defensive-minded player that could do quite well under Clement if Clement can find the right role for him. But on the whole, I guess wholesale changes, just have to wait to see, really.
Yeah, perhaps, just perhaps, someone like a Premier League team or a very well-endowed Championship team will come in for our players and bid for them. Don't rule out Mo Barrow being of interest to certain Premier League teams moving up or keeping in the survival relegation battle next season. Liam Moore's obviously the name that's been bandied around, but he's certainly, Mo Barrow, still my shout for player of the season, and perhaps someone that's going to be making a move back to the Premier League if he continues to impress. But that is for the future. Obviously, if you have any opinions on that yourself, get them into the tilehurstend@gmail.com, get them in for the mailbag. We'll always happily discuss them, and we certainly will be discussing them in the future. But we'll continue with our theme of Preston and the Saturday game with Pub Chat, where we'll be talking about the atmosphere and the future of the Madejski Stadium.
The Tilehurst End Podcast. Read the blog on thetilehurstend.com.
So Sim, tell me about it then. What was it like being part of, I don't know what to call this, the South Stand Action Gang, I think I'm going with at the moment. Anyone with a snappier name than that, feel free to absolutely send that in to the Twitter or something, because we need a name for it. South Bank has been muted quite a lot as something that's related back to the Elm Park days, and certainly has a good ring to it being the South Stand. So what was this, and what was it like being in it?
I guess it was a very small, very tiny bunch of firm of ultras. However you want to put it, it was a really good day out. It was a really positive thing. I know it must have looked pretty odd to anyone in the stadium, whatever stand you're in, seeing 40, 50 odd people with crowded around at the bottom of the South Stand, being very loud. It must have looked very odd, but for those of us who were in that little section, it was a lot of fun. It was very positive. It was, it just felt like old Reading, to be honest. And I've missed that, just coming up with positive chants, new, exciting stuff, and just backing your team. Because often when I've been stood rather in Y26 over the last couple of years, a lot of it's just been taking the mickey out of opposition fans, things like that, winding up someone who's been stood in the wrong place in the away end, things like that. But the vibe was so very different in the South Stand on Saturday. It was really, really positive, it was all about just getting behind the team, and it's so refreshing to see. And obviously it's very small at the moment, but big things, if it can go on to become a big thing, they start small, and ultimately they've got to start from somewhere. Importantly, it's a fan-led thing. It's not driven by the club. It's certainly helped by the club, who are very receptive and very encouraging, but this is all fan-driven. This is all fan ideas. It's all genuine stuff. It's people with a real passion for the club who want to change the Madejski atmosphere, because we all know how bad it can be in the Madejski, particularly over the last couple of months, over the last couple of years even. Ever since we've come down from the Premier League, there have been problems with a kind of a stale or sometimes even outright negative atmosphere. And something needs to be done about it. So it's really good to see fans taking the initiative and really driving something on about how to make the Madejski better, because it can be a great atmosphere when we really get behind the team, when we really back the boys and make some noise. So yeah, long may it continue.
Yeah, just to kind of explain for anyone who must have missed this, that the South Stand kind of had like a gaggle of 40 fans or so, one of which had a megaphone shouting, chants that people picked up on and kind of went with it. It was at the front of the South Stand, which I think was, obviously it was a temporary solution. This isn't the finished product by any means. I'd probably have it at the back of the South Stand. There is talk of potentially moving the away fans to facilitate this more. It is, as you say, it's entirely fan-led, because the club has a sort of small group of fans that it communicates with, and that it sort of throws around ideas with, or has ideas put to the club too. And this is an idea put to the club by a couple of fans who just thought that it would be a nice way to change things. As I said, I put on Twitter over the weekend that you can't just hope for a magic wand that a manager or a certain player is going to change the atmosphere as it is. It needs literal physical change. It needs people to be moved into better places with better acoustics. I think the problem is for me with the Y26 sort of atmosphere is, I sit in the northeast corner where you have the entire pitch in front of you, and you're at you have a goal right next to you, and the away fans are quite far away. So you can chant about the away fans, but it's not that important. You're generally chanting for the team. The idea, or the problem for me with the Y26, is that because the away fans are such a big part of your field of vision, you're occupied continuously by shouting at the away fans, and that doesn't make for good atmosphere, in my opinion. If you're in the South Stand, the theory is, with the away fans just off to the right, yes, you can shout at them and what have you, you can throw the odd sign over with your hands if you're that desperate, but you are focused on the pitch and what's going on in front of you. Your field of view is the entire pitch as well, so it's not like something off down farther right hand corner is a bit irrelevant to you. It's all focused, and I just have a good sort of vision of certainly the top two blocks of that middle of the South Stand being filled with home fans perhaps 2,000. It doesn't even have to be full, and you can make a really good atmosphere with that. So hopefully it's going to kick on the Tilehurst end. I'm trying to get information as to when it's going to return, exactly how it's going to work, and hearing from the guys, the fans involved with organising it, exactly what happens next. Hopefully on the Tilehurst end website we'll have that soon, and hopefully it's going to kick off. What do you think needs to accompany that then, Sim? What sort of things do you think? Do you want to see loads of flags being flown around on the south stand? Do you want banners and stuff, or do you want safe standing? What do you think needs to help this along?
In the long term, it could use safe standing. I guess the south stand's an ideal place to have some kind of safe standing, whether you want it there or in another part of the grounds. That will certainly help the atmosphere. I guess in the immediate term, well, we need more people, because it didn't look I guess visually particularly impressive with about 40 people huddled around a megaphone at the front of the south stand. But next time we do it, hopefully more people, maybe another 100 or 200 or whatever. But if we are to get more people in, they've got to buy into the point that this is about being positive. It's about getting behind the team. Because it's great to have a lot of people, but if it's going to become a copy of Y26, there's not really much point doing it. It's about creating a new atmosphere, a real positive vibe in the stadium. So hopefully get some more people. That would help an awful lot. But as long as they buy into what we are trying to build, trying to achieve in the south stand, then that's really important. If we could get some more flags, that'd be good. But for me, it's fan noise first and foremost.
Yeah, I don't want flags waved around in my field of vision during a game. That's not why I go to football for, to have some Burke with a flag in front of me blocking my field of view. Megaphone is an interesting idea with megaphone. It wasn't something, when I heard about this, I hadn't predicted that there'd be a bloke with a megaphone doing it, because I've done a lot of travelling around Europe watching football, and seeing at places like Milan and Nice, there's always a couple of people with megaphones really starting it off, and it's an intriguing idea, because Reading, one of the things you could say is that arguably it lacks a bit of community. It lacks a sense of all the fans maybe knowing each other, like a stereotypical traditional club where people all know each other, live in the same town, and have lived there for decades, all can feel. And I have found that watching it in European stadiums is that everyone knows the megaphone guys. Everyone has a little chat with them before the game, and that's something that we can, it's one of those little tiny things that can make football a lot better if everyone knows each other in the stand and everyone has a good time with it. And maybe that's one of the routes to achieving that.
Yeah, that was one of the things I really loved about it on Saturday, to be honest. That little community spirit. It was me just standing there with people I knew, some people I kind of half knew and met on the day. It was just a really good community, collective vibe, I guess. And it was a lot of fun. I know the megaphone seemed a bit silly even when you were stood there, but it was a bit of fun. It really got the 40 or 50 of us going. It was a lot of fun. I know it's easy to take the mickey out of I know a few people have on Twitter, but it's little things like that can work if you really push them on. And if you get 2,000 people in the south stand, or 500 or 1,000 or whatever, and you got a guy at the front barking chants out with a megaphone at the front, it can work really well. It can be a really good idea. So yeah, it's something I'd like to see happen. Might not work out, but yeah, give it a go.
Yeah, it's important to stress that this is the whole fan thing, that I want people who are listening to this now, if you have any questions about it, if you want to perhaps try and be involved in these sort of things moving forward, or if you have any ideas, of course, if anyone has any ideas, you're just sitting at home, maybe you don't even go to that many games, and you still have an idea that you think would work for Reading, send it into the Tilehurst end and we'll pass it on to the relevant people, because there's only so many voices that can be heard by the club, and you've got to pay praise to the club for listening as much as to the people who are speaking it. But we'll always at the Tilehurst end try and facilitate those sort of things happening. And yeah, hopefully in the next few weeks and months we'll have more information on it on the website. So certainly something to look out for. and hopefully exciting times putting the mad back in the Madejski, as I said at the top of the show. And speaking of fans and their opinions, we'll be moving on to the mailbag in just a few seconds' time.
The Tilehurst End Podcast. By Reading fans, for Reading fans.
Sim, a mediumly full mailbag this week. One question, well, a number of questions came in from Nick Huskinson, threw a lot at us, but I'm going to pick the one that I like the most out of his 4 or 5 from his tweet. And he's asked, would 4-4-2 not work well in this Clement system? And 4-4-2, I honestly cannot remember the last time I saw Reading play 4-4-2. Perhaps it was in the Leeds away game earlier in the season, but that was a bit of a one-off. And going much further back, I really can't think of when I've seen it, even under the second Brian McDermott era. So what do you think on 4-4-2? For me, we don't really have the strikers for a 4-4-2. I don't think we have certainly 2 good strikers, let alone 1.
Yeah, I think you're right with the Leeds point. I think that's the last time we tried it. I guess you look at the personnel required for it, 2 really hard-working wingers to protect your fullbacks, and for me, I don't think Barrow and Aluko quite offer enough in terms of cover. They're certainly good going forwards, but I just think tracking back, they're not quite as good as wingers we've had in 4-4-2 over the last couple of years. Need some really hard-working centre midfielders too. 2 really hard-working midfielders to properly cover for your back 4 and then offer you something else going forward as well. We had that with, say, Karachan and Ledgerwood a couple of years ago, or Sidwell and Harper. I'm not quite so sure that our best midfielders at the moment, our best centre midfielders, quite fit that midfield partnership in the same way. You look at people like Swift and Kelly, they're quite lightweight, they're very technical. So for me, they have to fit into a 3. And also at the top end, you need that pacey striker through the middle, who Danny Lodi could be in a couple of years' time, but at the moment you've got people like Kermagant, Smith, Martin, Bodvarsson, who are very hard-working, very physical strikers, but they don't offer enough movement, and you really need that dynamic second striker to give you another option going forwards, and I just don't think we have quite the options for it. If we did have the options, tactically it could work in terms of a kind of a deep-lying 2 banks of 4 in the same way that Burnley have done over the last couple of years, and Clement could make it work, but just at the moment I'm not so sure.
It's funny you mention that there's not a good quality central midfield pairing, because I think we've got about 9 central midfielders at the moment. It feels like the idea that, I mean, I agree with you in a sense, isn't it, that none of them quite fit the bill for a 4-4-2. A lot of them 4-3-3 if you've got enough just sheer bodies there, but none of them cover the ground. Bakuna, I think, has the characteristics to do it, but I don't think he has the work rate. Vandenberg has the work rate and the characteristics, but he's too much of a liability positionally. George Evans, a bit much for muchness. Swift and Kelly, yeah, you put them behind the striker, but I don't think you put either of them alongside just one other man. That would feel a bit vulnerable. So 4-4-2, I don't think that Clement's going to take it moving forward. I think it would work well with a few additions, and I'm certainly not the type of person who would hate 4-4-2 being played by Reading. Quite the opposite. I just think that a lot of changes would need to be made, and probably one of them needs to be the manager to have that as working. Bilal Benasser says, do you think that the Preston lineup was our best possible lineup, excluding injured and suspended players? Of course, we had Omar Richards came in at left back, 4-2-3-1 with Bakuna, Kelly and Swift as the midfielders, Bodvarsson up front. Otherwise it was all pretty much as expected. Were you thinking that lineup is just about as good as it can be at the moment?
Yeah, I was thinking about that after the game actually, and I don't think there are any obvious changes you can make really. Even if you do include players who are injured and suspended, there aren't really a huge amount of changes. I guess maybe to push Jordan Lobita coming in for Omar Richards. Richards has looked good this season, but just recovering from injury on Saturday, he's not looked quite at his usual standard.
It wouldn't be unfair to say that it was his worst game for Reading on Saturday, but that's because his other games have been generally pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. He just looked a little bit off the pace. He looked a little less decisive on the ball and off it. But that's perfectly understandable when you're coming back from a couple of weeks out. Looking at the rest of the team, I'd really like to see Martin properly develop and make that central striking role his own, particularly if he can link up with someone like John Swift or Liam Kelly. But at the moment, it's just not fitting at the moment. Reading are trying to play the kind of game for a striker who should be stretching the play, making runs down the channel. But Martin isn't that kind of player. He's a very static, very physical striker who needs the ball into feet to try and link up play. And Reading can't quite work to those strengths at the moment. If they can, they've got a very good striker on their hands. But I guess at the moment, in terms of how they're playing, John Daddy Bodvarsson offers more all round.
You know who I think would be a really good striker in this team? Complete tangent to go off here, but I think Leroy Lita would be a fantastic striker for this team because he plays, he doesn't rely on balls around the shoulder, but he plays off the shoulder and then always kind of backed in, I should say, past tense, and waited for others to kind of come around him, and then had such a good eye for a ball into the box and finding that extra little bit of space, happy to run the channels a little bit. I think Leroy Lita would really work in this team, actually.
Yeah, could certainly use some pace going forwards. He's that confident, cheeky player that you need in some teams, and I think Reading could really use that real pace going forwards, playing off the shoulder of someone like Martin or Bodvarsson, who would give us that extra element. Could really stretch in defence as well if he can link up with Baron Aluko. Where is he at the moment?
Was it Thailand?
I think it might be Thailand, somewhere out in the Far East, off gallivanting around the globe. He seems to have kind of gone off the radar in the last couple of years. I'm not quite 100%.
Yeah, last seen in Sisaket, having also played for AO Chania, which is
oh yeah, I remember those.
According to Wikipedia, that's Greek, and then he went to Yeovil, then he went to Thailand. So yeah, he's only 33, Leroy Lita, and just considering how most of our strike force is about 37, then that's a bit of a weird one to think that he's only 33. Just want to think about maybe people can get in touch with their players from days gone by that they would drop into this team and work particularly well. Scott from the States asked, who played left back when Omar Richards was subbed off, and how was the formation adjusted? It was Paul Clement came on for him. How exactly did that work? Did Paul Clement slot in at left back?
It was one of the most convoluted overall team changes for one substitution I've seen in quite a while. So what we did have was Gunter as right back and Richards as left back. And then Swift, Kelly and Bacuna in the midfield three. But what we did in the second half when Richards came off for Clement was to put Gunter from right back to left back, Bacuna from holding midfield to right back, Clement came in as an attacking midfielder, and then Swift and Kelly both kind of dropped back a bit in Bacuna's role. So it was about half the team changing for one swap, all because we've used up all of our left backs, apparently. Blackett was in for a couple of games and is now injured. Jordan Abita is out for the season. Omar Richards is recovering from injury. And I think Tamai Watson is still unavailable. He's not a left back by trade, but in terms of our stock of fullbacks overall, we're getting particularly short at the moment. So we're having to rely on Bacuna and Clement a couple of weeks ago as well, more than we would like to.
Yeah, you'd have thought that 3 left backs was more than enough, ample left backs, but no, apparently as it happens, still not enough. And the injuries, still a bit of a weird one with the injuries this year. It's been talked about a little bit, but not so much. But injuries just continue to pop up out of nowhere. The manager, obviously, there was no way that Jaap Stam leaving was going to fix the injury situation overnight. But as you say, Tyler Blackett was unavailable. Liam Kelly and John Swift have been in and out the side. Bodvarsson came back this week. It's a bit of an annoying one, and hopefully one that we can end for next season.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the last couple of months of Nigel Adkins, actually, when we just had so many injuries piling up. I think by the end of his time we had to have half of our matchday squad made up of academy graduates or something like that, because we were just losing players to injury so much. And I guess there must be some kind of problem behind the scenes, whether it was training under Yapstam or fitness or something like that. There's got to be something going on that is that can explain it. And I just hope that Clement can really sort it out over the next couple of months, because it has crippled our season so far.
Yeah, last question then from Cars05, who asks, can the Football League season end now? This is something that I think I might have mentioned on the pod a little bit of time ago, but do you think, would you take the season ending now? Are you happy for it to just go, you know what, we're safe, we're 19th, it was 5 points clear of the relegation zone at the moment, just end it now, don't worry about playing Ipswich or Sunderland or getting more used to Paul Clement or bringing through maybe another couple of players for a few more minutes off the academy, just get the season done? Would you be happy to just forbid the last 5 games and be done with it?
I'd be absolutely delighted if we finished 0 points clear and safe by 1 goal of goal difference, to be honest. As long as we stay up, that's all that matters at the moment. I always miss football when it's gone for the summer months. You can never quite get used to those couple of months without any proper league football, so I never like saying we should finish the season we should finish the season early, but if it keeps us up, then absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a World Cup summer this year, mate. Don't worry about missing football. There'll be football back to back to back during the summer months.
That's not proper football. That's not Reading playing Barnsley on the proverbial cold Tuesday night. That's not proper football.
No, it's only like Lionel Messi versus Spain or something like that. It's not quite the real thing. I see what you mean. I don't think I'd end the season just yet. I want one more win. I want one more, just a good trip to Fulham, maybe a last minute equaliser, and then I'll say, you know what, end it there. I just want one last little bit of joy. Maybe we can relegate Sunderland. Is that Saturday we play them? Yeah, Saturday. I think, is it possible for us to relegate Sunderland? 10 points clear now. There'll be 4 games left after. We'll have to beat them, and I think Bolton have to win as well.
Something like that. What would be even better, though, if we could somehow deny automatic promotion to Cardiff City on the last day of the season to Neil Warnock at home. If we could manage that, then that would, I guess, make the whole season worth it.
Exactly, and that will be on TV as well, so that'll be before the nation's eyes. Just think of all the riches that are before us, Reading fans. There's no reason to end the season just yet. We've got at least 3 more trolling games in us yet, and we'll troll our way towards the end of the season. And speaking of which, we'll go on to preview Fulham now in Any Other Business.
The Tilehurst End Podcast. Any Other Business.
So Sim, you drew my attention at the start of the show, or just off air, should I say, to how Fulham are selling tickets for this game. Amazingly, it's not sold out yet, as I thought promotion-chasing teams sold out games very easily, but they're selling this as Redemption, R-E-A-D-emption, that is, for their playoff semi-final exit at our hands last season. This is a bit of a dodgy one, isn't it? Because Fulham are good, and we don't want to face an annoyed Fulham, because then they might be really good.
Yeah, I'm really worried about this one, to be honest. Very good side going forwards, very confident. They've got some really good form at the moment. I think they've not lost in quite a while now. They've really stormed up the table, and in contrast to last season, they seem to have a lot more about them and seem to have a lot more mental strength. They've bounced back really well from that playoff defeat to us, and I think they'd be good value for promotion, to be honest. Particularly at home, going up against the team that denied them promotion in a sense last year. They could be really up for it. They've still got quite a few players around the team from that side that lost out last year, I guess with the exception of Sonny Aluko. It'd be great if he could score against them on Tuesday. I would absolutely love that. But they are really going to be up for it. They're really going to be desperate for revenge, and if we're not careful, we could get a bit of a hiding.
Well, they'll know that Cardiff go to Villa on Tuesday, and that if they beat us and Cardiff fail to win at Villa, then they'll get second place, even though Cardiff have a game in hand. So they'll be fully aware of what is at stake. The league's second highest goal scorers over the course of the season. For an extra bonus point on this podcast where we don't tally any such points, can you tell me the only time that Reading have won away to Fulham in the English second tier?
Oh, that is a very good question. I do not know. I've got some very bad memories of us losing in the last couple of years, but I cannot recall.
Well, you won't be able to recall because according to my resource, aka 11v11.com, it was on 27th of December 1926. It was in League Division 2, which I think in old money is the Championship. We claimed a 2-1 win. Otherwise, I mean, we played Fulham a lot in the third division, but not so much in the Championship, and we've never won in the Championship since 1926. Just to add some more stats in at you, as you kind of alluded to, they've not lost in the league since mid-December. They've not conceded a goal in 3 games. They've dropped just 2 points at home since mid-November, and that was the 2-2 draw on TV against QPR relatively recently. And they last failed to score in the league in late October. How on earth do we get something out of this game other than Fulham just deciding to completely capitulate?
We're going to have to practice the dark arts, I guess. Some real naughty, dirty play, I guess. The real kind of, the real housery that you get from some teams that go to the really good sides and just park the bus and really just play for that 0-0 draw. If we can just get men behind the ball, really annoy the home crowd, then I guess we can just annoy our way to a point.
Yeah, one stat that is in our favour is that this season against the top 5, home and away, we've taken a rather impressive 9 points off of the top 5 this season. That's including a victory against Derby away from home. We've drawn against Derby and Fulham both at home. We've beaten Aston Villa at home as well. So, it's not terrible Reading against the top half of the teams, top playoff teams this season. Maybe we can carry it into Tuesday. Prediction league-wise, I'll ask you for your prediction in just a moment, Sim. In terms of the Preston game, Wim broke his bad run with a victory 1-0, he claimed. He's been very positive for Wim recently. It's almost like he works for the club or something now. I'm not quite entirely sure why he's turned so positive. Westy and Johnny are both on 23 points, with Tom Crocker leading on 26 points. That leaves myself and Handbag. So I've been getting a lot of results, but not the score lines lately. We're on 18 behind him. I think for Fulham, I'm going to go for a narrow 1-0 defeat. I hope to God that we don't go there and get thrashed. And I don't generally believe that the Championship is as predictable that we'll go there and get thrashed. This is the league that throws up all kinds of surprises and throws up all kinds of dodgy games. We're under a new manager. We've won 2 of our last 3. Both of those games we didn't concede in. Things can happen. You can never lose faith in the Championship that things can happen. And how do you think this one will go?
Oh, I don't know, to be honest. It all depends on, I guess, whether we get another red card or not. Because you look back to that Villa game last week, and we look very good value for a 0-0 draw for a lot of the game until that moment of madness from Dave Edwards. If we can avoid that and avoid other similarly costly mistakes, then I guess we have a good chance of sneaking something. But even then, Fulham have got so much talent, so much capability going forwards that we're really going to have to be on our game if we're to keep the score down, I guess. And considering how uncreative we've been going forwards, I don't really fancy us to get too many chances, if any. So at the moment, I guess I'm going to be pushed into a 2-0 defeat.
I think that one of the worries about this game is that the way we went to Wolves and also to Villa, which was obviously under Clement last week, we didn't really do much into the game, did we? We did kind of let the game pass us by, hoping that we were just going to nick a goal out of magic and hope that the team we were playing weren't going to produce anything themselves. And I don't think that'll work on Tuesday.
No, I don't think so. Fulham have got a good manager in Djukanovic, and I'm sure he will have become wise to how Reading are likely to set up. He will have looked at that Villa game as a good example of how Clement will want to approach the game, and he's just going to go out all out, I guess, and make sure that Fulham score as many goals as they can. Because even if Reading can nick a goal or two, it's not going to be enough, I don't think.
Yeah, also of interest to ourselves in our relegation battle on Tuesday night, Burton are at home to Hull. We have QPR versus Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday pretty much clear of it now. Sunderland are at home to Norwich, a very unpredictable team, Norwich. Ipswich are away to Barnsley. Ipswich are a very unpredictable team as well. Bolton at home to Millwall, who, I mean, they're doing quite well, Millwall. They're fighting on the verge of the playoffs, so that's a good team to go to Bolton, I think. And Bolton, who lost at Derby on the weekend, they're currently just on the brink of the relegation zone. Let's go through it now quickly. Burton and Sunderland both on 32 points, having played 41. Barnsley 37 points, having played 40. Bolton 39 points, having played 41, as well as the rest of the teams. Birmingham 40 points, Reading 42, Hull 44, Forest 46, and Sheffield Wednesday 47. So, you know, we're 5 points off 16th at the moment, so we're looking up. We can get a mid-table finish.
Yeah, and I guess this week could very well define the relegation battle, because it'll only be about 3 or 4 games to go after Saturday's game, something like that. And
yeah, 3 games.
It could be, particularly with us playing Sunderland, it could be their death knell at the end of the week, if the week goes particularly badly for them and goes well for us. Similarly for Burton, they could go down this week, I think, potentially. I'm not too worried about Tuesday, but if we can get that win next week, then anything that happens on Tuesday shouldn't really matter, because you think about how bad we were at Aston Villa in terms of going there to set up to get a draw and then not being able to do that, not getting anything going forwards. All of that was forgotten a couple of days later when we get a good win against Preston. So as long as we can get a few wins at home against the teams that we should beat, Sunderland and perhaps Ipswich in a couple of weeks, maybe going to Sheffield Wednesday, two who should be safe, then games like Fulham and Cardiff coming up in a couple of weeks hopefully shouldn't matter.
Absolutely, and we'll be at the Fulham game giving you all the coverage you can need on the tilehurstend.com and on the Twitter and on the Facebook, of course. And a final mention, of course, for Johnny Hunt's Walk to Fulham, which he's doing from Reading, and that is for Campaign Against Living Miserably, CALM, the suicide prevention charity. It's getting actually really close to its target at the moment, so there'll be a link to it there's always a link to it on Tilehurst, and we'll be pushing it on the social media platforms as well as in the article for this podcast. It's getting near its target, so it'd be great if he could hit the target for that, and certainly something that's close to his heart, and we'll be backing that to the hilt. So there it is then. It's quite possibly the make or break week for the relegation battle. Burton and Sunderland, that's more for Saturday that they'll be looking to go down. Sunderland, we might be able to relegate them on Saturday, but I can tell you for a fact that if Reading win their next 2 games this week against Fulham and against Sunderland, and Barnsley dare drop a single point, that will be safety for Reading. Let's go and get those 2 wins. Thank you for joining us, Sim, this week. Hopefully we'll be there on Tuesday watching another 3 points come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on, yours.
Exactly. That is the sentiment here. As always, hopefully this is the week we do it. If not, we'll do it next week. It'll be fine. Come on, yours.
You smile, funny how the crimes always leave a trail.